The dust swirled across the barren prairie as Jacob Morgan guided his horse along the rutted trail that passed for a road in these parts. The summer of 1887 had been merciless to the Montana Territory, leaving the land cracked and thirsting for rain that refused to come. He'd been riding for 3 days straight, returning from a cattle drive that had barely fetched enough to keep his own small ranch afloat through the coming winter. As the sun began its descent toward the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Jacob noticed something unusual ahead. A small soddy house stood isolated against the vast emptiness, its single window dark and lifeless. What caught his attention wasn't the house itself, such dwellings dotted the frontier landscape, but rather the complete absence of smoke from its chimney despite the cooling evening air, and the eerie stillness that surrounded it. Something gnawed at his conscience, urging him to investigate. He'd learned long ago to trust these instincts out here where civilization's thin veneer could crack at any moment, leaving people vulnerable to the harsh realities of frontier life. He turned his horse toward the dwelling, the animal's hooves making soft thuds against the hard-packed earth. As he drew closer, he noticed the small garden plot beside the house had withered to nothing but brown stalks and dead vines. The fence posts leaned at odd angles, and the whole place had an air of desperate abandonment about it. Yet he could see fresh footprints in the dust near the door, small ones that belonged to children. Jacob dismounted and approached the door cautiously. Before he could knock, he heard a sound from within, a soft whimpering that made his chest tighten. He rapped his knuckles against the weathered wood. "Hello? Anyone there? I mean no harm. Just passing through and wanted to make sure everything's all right." Silence followed, then the sound of shuffling feet. The door opened just a crack, and a woman's face appeared in the gap, so thin and hollow-cheeked that Jacob had to suppress his shock. Her eyes, though sunken with hunger and exhaustion, still held a fierce protective gleam as they studied him warily. "We don't want any trouble, mister," she said, her voice barely above a whisper but steady nonetheless. "No trouble, ma'am. Name's Jacob Morgan. I was just riding past and noticed your place looked a bit quiet." "Everything all right?" The woman's composure cracked slightly, and she closed her eyes as if gathering strength. When she opened them again, they glistened with unshed tears. She opened the door wider, revealing her gaunt frame draped in a dress that had once fit properly but now hung loosely on her diminished body. Behind her, Jacob could see 2 small girls huddled together on a bare mattress in the corner, their eyes wide and watchful, their faces as thin as their mothers'. The house was nearly empty of furnishings and supplies. A few dishes sat on a crude shelf, and that was about all he could see beyond the basic structure itself. "We're managing," she said, but the lie was transparent as glass. Jacob removed his hat respectfully. "Ma'am, forgive my directness, but you don't look like you're managing at all. When's the last time you folks had a proper meal?" The woman's chin trembled, but she lifted it defiantly. "We had some cornmeal 2 days back. Made it into mush. The girls ate most of it. And you?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Where's your husband, ma'am?" At this, the woman's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. Her shoulders sagged, and she gripped the doorframe for support. "Dead these 4 months past. Fever took him quick. We buried him out by that cottonwood tree yonder. He was a good man. Tried so hard to make this place work, but the land fought him every step. When he died, I thought maybe I could hold on, could make it work for the girls' sake. But I sold everything we had just to buy seed that wouldn't grow in this cursed drought. The chickens died. The cow dried up and wandered off or got took by wolves. I went to town last month, tried to find work, any kind of work, but they said a woman with 2 small children couldn't be depended on. Said I should go back east to family, but there ain't no family left. There's nobody." Jacob felt something twist in his chest. He'd seen hard times himself, knew what it was like to face the frontier's indifference to human suffering. But seeing these 3 souls, this mother trying desperately to protect her children while slowly starving herself, struck something deep within him. The woman suddenly straightened, and with heartbreaking dignity, she spoke words that Jacob would remember for the rest of his life. "Mr. Morgan, I can see you're a decent man. I'm going to ask you something, and I'll understand if you say no and ride on. But I'm past pride now, past everything except what's best for my girls." She paused, drawing a shaking breath. "Take my children, please. Take them to town. to the church, to anyone who'll feed them and give them a chance at life. I can't watch them waste away. I won't. The two little girls had crept closer during this exchange, and now they clutched their mother's skirts, their eyes enormous in their thin faces. The elder, who couldn't have been more than 7, spoke up in a small voice. We don't want to go without you, Mama. Jacob stood there on that dusty threshold, his heart hammering in his chest. He thought of his own place, modest but adequate, with stores enough to get through winter if he was careful. He thought of his wife, Mary, dead these 2 years from childbirth along with the son he'd never gotten to know. He thought of the emptiness of his house, the silence that greeted him every evening, the purposelessness that had settled over his life like dust over abandoned furniture. He thought of all this in the space of a few heartbeats, and then he heard himself say, "Ma'am, I'll take them." The woman closed her eyes, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you. God bless you, sir. Thank you. But I'll take you too." Her eyes flew open. "What?" Jacob settled his hat back on his head and met her gaze steadily. "You heard me right. I'll take you too. All 3 of you. I've got a ranch about 15 miles south of here. It ain't much, but it's solid, and I've got supplies laid in. Garden's doing poorly like everyone's, but I've got dried goods and some cattle still giving milk. There's room enough, and to be plain about it, I could use help running the place. It's too much for one person, and I've been managing alone too long. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference." He shifted his weight, trying to find the right words. "Look, ma'am, I know how it sounds. You don't know me from Adam, and here I am suggesting you and your girls come to my place. I understand if you're suspicious. But the truth is plain. You can't stay here. You said yourself there's no help coming, no family back east. Winter's not far off, and you won't survive it, not like this. I'm offering you a chance, that's all. A job, if you want to think of it that way. Help me keep my place running, and I'll make sure you and your girls have food and shelter. It's a fair trade, seems to me." The woman stared at him, clearly torn between hope and fear, between the instinct to protect her children and the knowledge that she was failing to do exactly that. "I don't even know if I can trust you." "No, you don't," Jacob agreed. "But what choice do you have? You already said you'd give me your children. Is coming along with them really more dangerous than staying here to starve?" She looked back at her daughters, at their thin arms and hollow eyes, and he saw the moment she made her decision. It was visible in the way her shoulders straightened, the way she lifted her chin with a ghost of her former strength. "Give me a few minutes to gather our things. Take what you need. I'll water my horse and check around outside." As she retreated into the dim interior of the soddy, Jacob walked around the property. There wasn't much to see evidence of dreams gone wrong, of plans that had withered like the crops in the merciless sun. He found the grave by the cottonwood tree, marked with a simple wooden cross. The name, Thomas, was carved into it, along with the year. Jacob stood there for a moment, hat in hand, and spoke to the dead man. "I'll do right by them," he said quietly. "You have my word on that." When the woman emerged, she carried a small bundle of clothes and a worn Bible. The girls each clutched a rag doll, likely the only toys they possessed. She locked the door out of habit more than necessity. There was nothing left inside worth stealing. "What's your name, ma'am?" Jacob asked as he helped her onto his horse. The girls would ride together behind the saddle. Sarah Mitchell. "These are my daughters, Emma and Lucy." "Well, Mrs. Mitchell, let's get you all home." The ride to Jacob's ranch took several hours, as they had to move slowly with 3 passengers on one horse. Darkness fell, and the stars emerged in their thousands, painting the sky with light. The girls fell asleep against their mother's back, and Sarah herself swayed with exhaustion. When they finally arrived, Jacob's 2 ranch hands, old Pete and young Billy, came out of the bunkhouse to see what the commotion was about. Their eyes widened at the sight of the woman and children, but Jacob silenced their questions with a look. "Pete, Billy, this is Mrs. Mitchell and her daughters. They'll be staying on to help run the place. See that someone brings water for washing and get a fire going in the main house. Mrs. Mitchell, you and the girls will take the spare bedroom. It's not fancy, but the bed's comfortable and the roof doesn't leak." Over the following weeks, the ranch slowly transformed. Sarah proved to be a capable worker despite her weakened condition. As proper meals restored her strength, she took over the household tasks that Jacob had been neglecting, bringing order to the chaos of a house that had been run by a lonely man for too long. She cooked meals that filled the house with warmth and good smells, mended clothes and linens, and organized the supplies with an efficiency that impressed him. The girls, too, began to blossom. Color returned to their cheeks, and their laughter, tentative at first, began to ring out across the yard as they played and helped with small chores appropriate to their age. Emma proved to have a gentle way with the animals, while Lucy showed an endless curiosity about everything around her. Jacob found himself looking forward to coming in from his work, knowing the house would be lit and warm, knowing there would be conversation at dinner instead of silence. He taught the girls to ride, patiently leading them around the corral on the gentlest mare. He fixed a broken doll and was rewarded with a shy smile from Lucy that made his heart clench. And Sarah, he discovered, was more than just a capable worker. She was intelligent, with a dry wit that surprised him into laughter. She had opinions about everything from politics to poetry, and wasn't shy about expressing them. They fell into long conversations in the evenings. After the girls were in bed, talking about their pasts, their losses, their hopes for the future. One evening, about 2 months after they'd arrived, Sarah stood at the window looking out at the sunset. Jacob came to stand beside her, and they remained there in comfortable silence for a moment. "I never thanked you properly," she said finally. "For what you did, for all of this, no thanks needed. It's worked out well for both of us." She turned to look at him. "Has it, truly? We've disrupted your whole life, invaded your home, changed everything." "Changed it for the better," he said simply. "This house was dead before you came. Now it's alive again. That's worth more than I can say. The girls adore you. They've started calling you, Mr. Jacob. Like you're some kind of beloved uncle. They're good kids. You've done well by them. We've done well by each other, I think." She hesitated, then added softly, "Thomas would have liked you. He'd be grateful that you're the one who found us." "I'm grateful too," Jacob said. "More than you know." As winter approached, the ranch settled into comfortable routines. The family, for that's what they'd become without ever formally acknowledging it, worked together to prepare for the cold months ahead. They gathered the last of the harvest, such as it was, and made sure the animals were ready for winter. The house was stocked with firewood and provisions. On Christmas Eve, Jacob presented each of the girls with a new doll he'd ordered from town, along with fabric for new dresses. For Sarah, he'd found a beautiful shawl in deep blue, the color of her eyes. She'd cried when she unwrapped it, and the girls had hugged him fiercely. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Sarah and Jacob sat by the fire. She wore the shawl wrapped around her shoulders, and in the firelight, she looked peaceful in a way she hadn't that first day. "I have something to say," Jacob began, his heart pounding. "And I want you to listen all the way through before you answer." She turned to him, expectant. "When I found you that day, when you asked me to take your children, something shifted in me. I didn't plan this, any of this. But these past months, having you and the girls here, it's made me realize what I've been missing. What I want." He took a breath. "Sarah, I'm not a man of fancy words, but I know what I feel. I'd be honored if you'd consider marrying me. Not out of obligation or gratitude, but because I've come to care for you, for all of you. I want to make this arrangement permanent, if you're willing." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she smiled, a real smile that lit up her features. "Jacob Morgan, that day you came to my door was the worst day of my life. I'd given up on everything except saving my girls. But you didn't just save them. You saved me too, and somewhere along the way, in all these ordinary days of cooking and cleaning and talking and laughing, I fell in love with you. So yes, my answer is yes." They married in early spring, with Pete and Billy as witnesses and the girls as flower girls. The ceremony was simple, held in the small church in town, but it felt more real and true than any grand affair could have been. Years later, when Emma and Lucy were grown women with families of their own, they would tell the story of how their family came to be. They would speak of that terrible time when they were starving, when their mother had been prepared to give them away to save their lives. And they would tell of the cowboy who'd appeared like an answer to a prayer they'd been too weak to voice, The man who'd said he'd take them all, who'd given them not just food and shelter but a home, a future, and a love that had sustained them through all the years that followed.